Throughout history, the pen has been a tool for the artist, the politician, the author, and most importantly, the dreamer. The ink within is the lifeblood of illustrations, the written word, and mathematical equations, allowing those who would understand a glimpse into worlds other than their own. What worlds will you create while playing with ink? Hi, I'm Plutach.
And I'm Nayruan.
And welcome to Playing with Ink.
Welcome. This time it's going to be a little bit different. We were just talking before recording started of how we're going to open this. So,
this is going to be a weird opening.
weird opening. No guest today.
No guest.
This is the long-awaited, long-hinted at Tolkien episode. So we finally get this one started. First one, because it will be impossible to cover all of Tolkien's world, and most of you already know it as well, especially those of you who are Silmarillion veterans who have made your way through that tome,
who have ventured into the depths of those pages.
That is insane. I mean, you and I have talked about it plenty of times over the past few years.
Yeah, I've read it 3 times.
Yeah. Just sometimes I like to just listen to the opening of just the creation and the music of the Ainur.
The one that Andy Serkis does. Andy Serkis did an audiobook for it, and I love that one so much.
Yeah. And just in general, Andy Serkis, as soon as I figured out he was doing that, I went straight to The Hobbit. I want to hear Gollum in full on. And it's, if you guys haven't heard it, if you're listening to this, you've clicked on it. This is a Tolkien thing. This is Lord of the Rings related. Yep.
Yeah.
So of course you've heard Andy Serkis read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It's magical.
Yeah. It's magical.
So we're going to look into J.R.R. Tolkien as a world builder, and quite possibly, in my opinion, probably pretty much the father of modern world building and the father of modern fantasy. He's been coined as, that title. But we're gonna tie into how he did it and how it very much relates to world builders today and people creating these worlds. And there is such similarities. The letter that we're basically going to be taking all this from, that you and I have read, is the Walden letter from 1951. It was a letter that Tolkien wrote to his publisher, basically pleading to, publish everything. And he was trying to get the Silmarillion published as well. This is a good, I think Silmarillion came out in 1977, so this was a good 26 years before, and he never lived to even see the Silmarillion even be published. So, because that was when Christopher Tolkien took over and finished it for him. So, but this is Tolkien trying to push for that. And in it is basically you really get to step behind the curtain on what this man thought, and trying to, I'm trying to think of a better word for this, but basically you just get to see the inner workings. He opens up about what he wanted for, England. He wanted, a legend for that, how he started. And I'm beginning to ramble here, so maybe we should just go ahead and
I was just letting you ramble. I was okay, we're in.
It's I'm trying to condense all this man's thoughts into one paragraph, which is just simply impossible.
And it's not gonna work.
No. So if any of you want to go and look this up, the book we have, it's the Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, edited and selected by Humphrey Carpenter with the assistance of Christopher Tolkien. So, and we have the
The
revised,
revised the revised and expanded edition.
expanded edition. It even has
LOL.
it has little keynotes at the bottom. I did not
Yeah,
read.
it's really nice.
I didn't read that.
Oh, well, I highlighted some of them.
Actually, is that where you talked about William Shakespeare down here at the bottom? I see that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Okay. So, like I said, I think the best way to begin this is basically just reading this, and to preface this, you notice like he says stuff in this. Like, it's the only time he says stuff. It's like he's so informal, and then all of a sudden it's like he realizes, like a few paragraphs, like, wait a minute, I'm trying to convince this guy of that he needs.
It's very much like an early info dump of your world where he gets excited and you just start talking, and it's wonderful to see. Like, one thing I think that surprised me when reading, because I read more than just this one letter. I read some from his early life as well. And what really surprises me is how much I related to him as a creative, and how much he talked about, like, world building constantly. All this is in his head, and how much he was passionate about it, and how much he didn't know. Like, he was very hesitant to share it in his early life. But then as it got traction, he wanted to share more. And I related so much to, like, the specific things he said, and we'll get more into that later. But yeah, I was just surprised by how much I related to him almost as a world builder, and it kind of feels like, it's like, wow, Tolkien felt the same things I did to an extent about my world.
And in his time, I mean, think about it. Like, we grew up, in the late 20th century, 21st century. Nerddom and, like, talking about fairy fantasy type things, it was already kind of not talk. I mean, D&D, all that, like, is just shunned upon. I wonder what it was like, have all these ideas in his head, like, as a younger person, like, and wanting to talk to somebody about it.
I think that's why he had his wife.
Edith.
Yeah.
Luthien.
Yeah, Luthien. All right. Anyway, we can read some of it.
We'll get into that. All right, so this is the start of the Milton Waldman letter, and this is Tolkien's words to him. So let's begin. My dear Milton, you asked for a brief sketch of my stuff that is connected with my imaginary world. It is difficult to say anything without saying too much. The attempt to say a few words opens a floodgate of excitement. The egotist and artist at once desires to say how the stuff has grown, what it is like, and what he thinks, means, or is trying to represent by it all. I shall inflict some of this on you, but I will append a mere resume of its contents, which is maybe all that you want or will have use for, or use of, or in time. So basically, like I said, he's going to connect later on this letter, basically summaries of The Hobbit, or the Silmarillion, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, trying to convince, like, how all this connects. So, but here's really the first part, and also we talk, like, he says, my stuff.
Yeah, it's very informal for Tolkien. If you've, like, read any of his letters, even his letters to his children are very formal, with a little bit of sarcasm and pragmatism worked in, but still very positive but formal is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting way Tolkien writes. So this is, like, abnormal for how Tolkien, like, opens usually a letter.
It's just like he's got this big pile, this world, literally all the artists sitting behind him. He's like, hey, yeah, I'll let you see my stuff. You want to take a look at my stuff?
Behold,
yeah,
my stuff.
Yeah, you must see, behold my stuff.
Stuff.
So, but here's the first part that we want to get into, and this is where it begins to, like, some of you world builders out there may be surprised about this. This is Tolkien. In order of time, growth, and composition, this stuff began with me, though I do not suppose that that is of much interest to anyone but myself. I mean, I do not remember a time when I was not building it. Many children make up or begin to make up imaginary languages. I have been at it since I could write, but I have never stopped. And of course, as a professional philologist, especially interested in linguistic aesthetics, I have changed in taste, improved in theory, and probably in craft. Behind my stories is now a nexus of languages. We'll just stop right there. But he begins to talk. So
Hmm.
he doesn't remember a time when he wasn't coming up with this.
It's crazy because it feels like when you think of these big creatives and you're like, oh, they must have had some sort of process. And you're like, but one thing I found really interesting reading these letters is how often he references children and his own childhood and talking about the creative minds of children. His one of his first people to read The Hobbit was his children, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it was his editor's child that he constantly sent manuscripts to. And so it was his, in the early letters, he talks about his editor's child, and he goes, he's not the only opinion, but he's one of the opinions that I hold in most esteem, kind of. And it was this idea that children almost hold the key to creativity. And I found that very, very interesting, and very refreshing for like someone who we think of as like this person who did stuff when he was older. And so he didn't, obviously he started out young as a world builder in his head, but he didn't get it all down until later. So I don't know, I really like that, and I found that really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's also like confirming for him, because you could tell your children stories, or you could tell people who are close to you and just love you. They're gonna love whatever you tell them, like, or like be inclined to agree with you, like, yeah, dad, yeah, that's great. But somebody else's
Yeah.
child
Yeah.
who has no connection to this man
Yeah.
loves this story.
That's something.
Somebody outside of your bubble confirms what you have been hoping this entire time, that what you have is, I guess, it's worth it, words of affirmation, which, all worlds you come up with, as dopey, as crazy as it is, it's worth it to
Yep.
you. And if you create it and you are proud of it, you keep doing it. But for Tolkien, it seems like he was wanting something more, even from the beginning. Like he wanted, well, kind of with the next section as well. But yeah, you talk about his early life, which I've read two different biographies of his. One of them went very much in depth, which I think it took some liberties of like trying to go about and like look where he may have got some ideas, like for the Two Towers. It said like in one certain, I forget what, it said he passed by two distinct like coal towers every day, and like trying to suggest, like, I don't read much into that. Like that's where you
The
got
funny
the
thing about
imagery of the Two Towers.
Tolkien is that he wanted his story to be a story separate from our world, which we'll talk about, I guess, more. But he constantly talks about how he hates allegory.
Yeah, it's just,
Um, and and so many people try to apply allegory to Lord of the Rings, and you're like, no, 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 no. It's a story. That's
yep.
the point. So when people try to say, oh, this is where he got inspiration from, I'm a little skeptic, because Tolkien may have just, it's a story. He could have, obviously you're inspired by the world
Yeah.
around you all the time, but like trying to connect one inspiration piece to something as iconic as the Two Towers, I don't think that works necessarily, because there's so many moving parts in the
Yeah.
concept of the Two Towers
He
that
he definitely
yeah.
did say like in the inspiration for Rivendell was his time in Sweden, the
Yeah.
loud water.
Obviously he got direct inspiration, but I'm like, anything that comes from him saying I got inspiration from this,
Yeah.
I'm skeptical of people who try to like say, oh, this is where he got inspiration.
Yeah,
Because
put words in his mouth, like, and twist it for, because like literally the next page, to quote Tolkien, like you said, I dislike allegory.
Allegory. And when he dislikes something, it really means he hates it. Because I found that reading his letters is that he dislikes something, he hates it, kind of.
He had
is kind of like
then he hated
he had strong
Dune
feelings
as well. He did not
He
like
hated
Dune.
Dune.
Yeah,
He did not like Dune.
no.
There's this funny moment. I'm getting off topic, but there's this funny moment in one of his earlier letters when he's talking about something like a publisher rejecting Lewis or something, and he goes, basically his whole letter is no, 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 no one criticizes Lewis, only I can do that. That was basically his whole thing was saying no, I only criticize Lewis. That's my job. That's
you
not someone else's job.
you do not have the right to insult one of my Engling brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
You you fool.
Only I do that. Yeah.
It's like now
Um,
like saying, you you will not publish one of Lewis or Tolkien's book. Like, what are you insane?
yeah, exactly.
Um,
Um,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
the dislike allegory. So it's the conscious and intentional allegory. Yet any attempt to explain the purport of myth or fairy tale must use allegorical language. So he talks about the necessity of allegorical language while something not being an allegory. And I think that comes from the way the way we relate stuff to our world,
Yeah.
and how we understand an imaginary world. Um, but he goes on to talk about allegorical interpretations. Um, yeah, and he talks about like deliberate allegory is almost impossible to
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. You
he
can't
says
really
a
avoid it.
deliberate allegory is made the more nearly will it be acceptable just as a story. While the better a deliberate allegory is made, the more nearly will it be acceptable as just a story. But right before that, he says susceptible of allegorical interpretations. And of course, the more life a story has, the more readily it will be susceptible to allegorical interpretations.
Yep.
So it's like this reverse almost
Yeah.
thing of allegory.
I,
And then he talks about. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say he knew that going on. I mean, people would compare it. I think I can't remember
Yeah.
what letter or like what quote or where I even got this from, but he was very well aware. I think in talks when people were trying to compare the War of the Ring to World War One or World War
Yeah.
Two, he didn't even like it being compared to the Savior Christian Judaism. Like,
Yeah, he talks about that later as well. He talks about like how some mythos is rooted deeply in Christianity and how he didn't want his mythos
yep,
to be rooted in Christianity. He just wanted it to be mythos.
Yep, that actually is a good transition to the next part.
Nice.
Like, so in that vein, when he was building this world, it was like one thing that and some of you are aware of it, he did not like he didn't like the Normans for taking away the mythos and legendarium of, or like the old stories of what old England was. When the Normans invaded, they basically just purged everything. I would say even further than that. The Romans had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, the Romans had a lot to do with it as well.
They got rid of the Druids, but
yeah, pretty much.
I'm surprised he did. He may mention it at some point about that, but like he
does specifically.
He does, okay, but
in this letter
but he just he longed for a story for his country, which that's what we will pick up on.
Another thing that was his nationalism. But it wasn't like he was proud of his country, but he was also like he disliked he was like he kind of whenever he talks about his American publishers, he kind of like talks about it like very sarcastically, which I find very funny. But he loved his country because he fought for it in World War One, and so he wanted this story for his country that he saw that was taken away basically by the Normans and the Romans, and he made it. But a funny thing is he does not like Celtic or Irish mythologies because he finds them too whimsical, too fairy, and which is funny because it's almost like we've replaced Lord of the Rings in our mind with Irish because they all have Irish English accents. So it's almost like we've replaced Irish and Celtic mythology with Lord of the Rings. I don't know if he would necessarily like that because I thought he would think, in my mind, by the way he talks about it in his letter, he still respects it, but he dislikes it for his own kind of storytelling purposes. So,
He realizes that those stories like have to tie in at some point because it's a part of his
yeah,
land, part of his homeland. But
yeah.
you're right. He respected it. He definitely pulled well. Uh,
He didn't. Okay, so Irish mythologies are when talking about Irish, they're supposed to be nonsensical almost. They're supposed to be almost nonsensical tales of warning and nonsensical tales of you're not supposed to do this or this will be dangerous. So that's why like fairy circles are such a thing. It's like you're not supposed to walk in fairy circles. And so and we know Tolkien despised kind of nonsense. He almost broke up his friendship with Lewis simply because Lewis put Father Christmas in Narnia, and Tolkien thought that didn't make any sense. Um, so he always thought there had to be some kind of reasoning behind how something works. Um, and I find that very interesting because I feel like a lot of current world builders, especially for TTRPGs, would disagree with that almost. Like there doesn't have to be a reason. For sometimes something can just exist. And from a certain perspective. But for Tolkien, everything had to have a reason. And I feel like that's his background as a professor and a philologist is that everything is structured and everything leads to another. I think it's very helpful when world building. Um, I just think it's interesting that some people that I've talked to when world building for TTRPGs, they're like, no, this just exists for joy, and this part of my world exists. There's no really any reason to it. There's no reason for it to exist. It just exists so my players can have fun. So I find that like almost like a weird kind of dichotomy of this world builder who's like everything has to have structure. Not everything, but like most things have to have structure. And then the idea that what it's involved in to for specifically like TTRPGs, is that structure a lot of structure is used in TTRPGs, but the key moments are fun and they necessarily don't happen for a reason. Um, which I
there's
find kind of funny and kind of like a domino effect.
there's one exception, much like a lot of Tolkien, like he says he doesn't like this or like he doesn't like allegory or things like. There's always one
Yeah.
exception. There's one
Yeah.
thing that comes to mind that does not make sense in his whole
Tom
legendarium.
Bombadil.
Yes, yes, dead on, yes.
Well, because he
He's
talks
like
about it in one of his earlier letters. He talks about the idea that an entity of existence. So I in one of his earlier letters, he talks about Tom Bombadil, or is it in this one?
no,
I don't
no,
know. There's one where he talks about Tom Bombadil, and he talks about the idea that why would an entity of such who basically exists as creation, kind of, why would that entity take part in because later
yeah.
in this letter we're examining, he talks about like the ideas of the fall, sub creativity,
Mhm.
and the art of creation through creation, and what your creation creates is it was like getting like Inception when I was reading it. But he talks about why would I think in my mind after reading that letter, I'm like Tom Bombadil is the ultimate is the creation in my mind. That's and it explains why he doesn't interact with the world in a way we would expect this entity to. That's how I describe him. I describe him as an entity because we don't really like I
No,
don't think there's been any confirmation as to what he is
no.
other than Tolkien said like existence. He's been very vague about who Tom Bombadil is. My personal theory and my personal headcanon and that he's a Tolkien self-insert character basically. So
That's
that's but
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
there's been so many discussions on Tom Bombadil. Like
Yeah.
most consider if they want to if they don't go with the route of like that's Tolkien's insert character, they say he's
Hmm.
Eru. You know the
Yeah.
which
I don't think
Eru
so.
is God. Eru is the
Yeah.
creator of all of Arda, all of Middle Earth. For people who don't know, Eru
Yeah.
is the one. Um,
Yeah. I feel like he's not Eru because I think it's Tolkien's way. I feel like there is reasoning to it. I think Tolkien it was Tolkien's way for the hobbits to see that there was still good in creation. I think there was reasoning to it in the story, and from necessity of the story, birthed something for the world. Um, and that was Tom Bombadil.
he
That's kind of my thinking.
he's something that is beyond the Ainur, which would be the only thing above the Ainur is the Valar.
Yeah.
And
And for some reason he doesn't mess with the Valar. So
yeah,
we're
so
getting really deep into
yeah.
into it.
But like yeah, so go back to what were
Hmm.
we talking about again?
I don't know.
So easy to like go
There's
off.
so much.
It's just like, but actually, you talk about the fall and everything, and then it goes
Hmm.
more back into allegory here as well. But um,
He uses allegory to explain his stuff, but he's very particular about how his stuff is not allegory. He's
yeah,
like it's a story, but the only way we can understand it is through allegory. And that's our perceptions of it. And I find that like he understood, I think it was his background in language. He understood how the human mind almost perceives a story is because in languages that's how we communicate and how we perceive each other to a
exactly.
certain extent.
Yep.
So I was like his background in language allowed him to create ideas, and he was like, well, this is how this person would interpret this. How do I interpret this? How do I reverse engineer this interpretation, basically? So yeah, he talks specifically about, let me see if I can find it. um he talks about the fall, mortality, and the machine.
Yes.
um and the fall is the motive, while mortality is art and creativity, and the machine is kind of like this evil kind of, not necessarily evil, but this thing that keeps the story moving. It's the conflict. And what I find really interesting is that he calls it the machine because he hated industrialism.
Yes, he did
and
very
and
much.
so
Yeah,
yeah, so
like
I find it interesting.
like going back to talking about like growing up and passing by those two coal towers.
Hmm.
He did not like the like industry taking over and like leveling over
Yeah.
parts of like what was old. He did not like
Yeah.
that in the
He
least
talks
bit.
about like how in some of his earlier letters he talks about how sad he is that like the countryside is being destroyed.
Yep.
And at one point he says if I were to be something, I would be the English countryside. And that's why I think many people think, going back to Tom Bombadil, that's why many people think Tom Bombadil is Tolkien's self-insert character, because he embodies the English countryside almost to an extent. Um but I don't know, that's just theories in Tolkien's mind. But the idea of this, if we're just going about this from a world building perspective, um, the idea that there is these three things are almost essential to world building. And they don't even, fall is something used very often in Christianity, you know, the fall of humans, the fall of
Fall,
Adam, the fall of Eve,
fall of
whatever, the
Lucifer. The yeah.
fall of Lucifer. The fall is something often used in Christianity. However, Tolkien uses it as just a way to motivate the characters or keep the story moving and almost start the machine. Um, so yeah, so the fall for Tolkien he talks about is Malkar.
Melkor.
Melkor, sorry. Yeah, Melkor. Thank you. For those of you who maybe have only read Lord of the Rings, Melkor is Sauron's god. He was evil before Sauron was evil. Sauron was Melkor's servant. And Melkor was a god who wanted his own kind of thing. And so when Arda was created, Melkor kind of went off and did his own thing, and Araru was like, "No, don't do that." And Melkor was like, "Screw you, I'm gonna do that anyway." And that's basically what kind of started this evil in the world of Arda. And he talks about how this evil came about actually from because Melkor wanted to create something beautiful and he didn't understand why Eru was the only one to make something beautiful. So he talks about how the fall is evil that comes from good intentions. And I think that is like, I think that's so important for world builders to remember is that evil sometimes isn't just pure evil. And while it can lead to this idea of pure evil, evil usually starts with good intentions. Not usually, but it starts with good but selfish intentions, kind of. Good intentions that turn selfish is, I think, what was kind of Tolkien's point by using that kind of language.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then mortality is about art and creativity, and he talks about how the magic of the elves is their art.
Yep.
Um,
That's
and that's a cool thing about the sub-creation. I feel like I just talked about that, but he talks about the creation of creation and how they create. And I'm like, this is crazy, but it's true. Like some people talk about how their world gets away from them, like and it just goes. And I'm like, that's almost like so meta. Like Tolkien's talking about this idea that the creation of the creator has to create. And I'm like,
that's
whoa.
That's also how he explains his magic, because he did not
Yeah.
like magic as we. I don't think Tolkien would very much like magic as we like describe like
Yeah.
within D&D or like any of these other.
No, I
I
don't
think
think
he
he
would
would like it
hate
either.
it.
Yeah, actually.
He would not
He
like.
he very much
He wouldn't like Gandalf
loved the
casting a
idea of
fireball.
mythos. Yeah, he loved the idea of magic being like this art form and almost this idea of beauty. So magic to the elves was beauty, kind of. And that's what he talks about. And I think it's so fascinating that for example, in my world, magic is very much like the force. So I wanted this like an entity almost that has a will that it's just an easy way to explain magic, right?
Hmm.
But I love the thought that went into this and he's like we think of Lord of the Rings as very low magic, but the magic is in everything. It's in the beauty of the world. And it's who's able to harness that beauty, like the elves or those the elf friends of the humans. Those people are able to harness the beauty of the world and they are able to use magic.
And to
And I think that was Tolkien's point.
and to harp back on like you talk about the machine and everything. Everybody think back to Peter Jackson's films, because this gets your
Yeah.
vision, or the image in your mind. Which side had the
Machines.
industrializations? Which side
Yeah,
had the
exactly.
machine of war?
Yeah.
Saruman.
Grog.
Yeah,
Grog.
Grog. Well,
Grog. Grog.
Grog is love. Grog is life. Grog. I mean,
Yeah,
Gron, not Grog.
grog,
Gron.
grog,
Gron is love. But
grog is love.
it Saruman leveled all those trees in Isengard,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
created just the industrialization of Isengard. And obviously, in Mordor, you just had it's all very contrast of what is natural beauty versus what this machine of
Mm-hmm.
war, which,
It's almost like Tolkien was trying to say, man cannot, man has to live with the beauty of the world. We cannot conquer it
yep.
because we'll end up destroying it. And I think that is a really cool message from Tolkien. That's just my interpretation, considering I've seen the Peter Jackson films. And I
too
think,
many times.
yeah, a lot of times.
Me too many times.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think there's so much going on in Tolkien's mind and how I feel like his we harped on it or we harped on it a little earlier about how Tolkien like has logic and reason to everything when some things just need to exist. I want to clarify that I think his reasoning and logic is very sound, and I think it is something a lot of us can use as world builders to expand our world, our worlds that we've created. Because while we kind of like, oh, everything has to have like a bajillion years backstory, that's not necessarily true for Tolkien. Nothing, he's just setting up this idea of continuous machine, continuous mortality. and continuous fall. Um,
Which, if you are a world builder and trying to do everything like Tolkien, God be with you.
yeah, yeah. But I don't think you need to do everything like Tolkien.
No,
I
no.
think this idea that this structure that he presented is almost like it's a way to think about world building, just from Tolkien's perspective. And I think it's a very sound way to think about world building. Um, well, there's definitely other areas of thought, other ways to think about creative works in world building. Um, I think something else also, I just see this on my page. If you don't mind me talking about it,
No, no,
Chandler,
go
it's
for it.
the truths. So he talks about, even in legends and myths, he talks about are largely made of truths. Now, he's not talking about the fact that Zeus is real, or that, that Thor actually has this like hammer or something. He's talking about myths have truths of morality and arts, like something like the human truths, basically. Like, when we think of human truths, we often think of like murder is bad, but we also think that that the elements of truth is something, like I said earlier, like beauty. And he says there cannot be any kind of story without a fall. All stories are ultimately about the fall, at least not for human minds as we know and have them. So, this idea is that the truth is that there is evil in the world, is what he's trying to get at, I think. And so um because we receive stories and myths, and that's almost our interpretation of truth. I think that's an also another thing to think about while you're world building, is it's almost like when people, to simplify it a little bit in less Tolkien terms, it's like, what is the theme you're trying to convey? Like, what part of human life about this certain part of your world? And your world can have a lot of truths to it. I think there are many truths besides the ones that Tolkien perpetuated. Like, obviously we know he didn't like Dune, but um Frank Herbert had some points
Yeah.
in writing Dune. So there are other truths. Like, you don't just have to fit this one fantastical Lord of the Rings kind of truth to it, like of beauty and art. You can also think about the truths of hate, revenge, all these things that can consume humans. Um, because, as yes, we are humans and our minds only go so far. So we do have to think about it in terms of human mind, but we can also propose ways to think further than the human mind. And while we may never be able to reach that ascendance of the human mind, we can still we can use truths that we learn from stories, mythos, to kind of look through that idea of ascendance, of truth, and create our own truth. I feel like the ultimate form of human connection, I've talked about this all the time, is storytelling, is because you're conveying your truths to someone else in a way that they will understand. Um,
which we
I feel
talked
like that's just
which we talked about, like
super important.
when Tolkien got to a certain point older, like when he went to university, he got to be with the Inklings, and they fed off each
Yeah,
other. They,
yeah.
of course, in the Inklings, a lot of you know as well, C.S. Lewis was in there, Chronicles of Narnia.
Hmm.
Other important, like prominent poets and writers of the time as well came from the Inklings. Uh, so yeah, you talk about the truths; they bounced it off each other. Then they, you need that, and
Yeah,
you need this connection.
yeah. I think, I don't know, this is more philosophical, but truth is almost how we connect to other humans. It's, if we want to get more basic, then stories are how we connect. It's truth. Um, it's the ways of life. It's how we live life, because, you know, life, things that happen are true things that happen.
Mhm.
So it's this idea that these things that happen to us really did happen. And so now when we try to convey them to others, we're telling the truth, which is very philosophical and all that. But life is to an extent an idea of truth, I think. And that's what Tolkien kind of, at least that was Tolkien's thought process. Um, or that's my interpretation of what Tolkien is saying. I want to preface this. I'm not a Tolkien scholar. So I am a nerd who loves Tolkien. So, but when I'm reading this is kind of what I feel. And I feel like he had a point about like the legends and the mythos being true. And then he goes on to talk about how as he moves from the legends and the mythos of the elves and he goes to the humans, which are called the followers in the Silmarillion, the second, they're called the second children, right? The second children of Eru or something like that.
The children of Eru or children.
Yeah.
The elves are the firstborn, and then the followers are men.
Followers,
and
men, something like that.
And if you want to figure out dwarves, that's a whole story in there as well. Dwarves were never meant to be in there.
Yeah, I love the story of how the dwarves came into existence. I find it funny, but anyway.
No mention of hobbits though.
No mention of hobbits.
Never.
He does talk about that in this letter, and about how hobbits are almost supposed to be like.
Yeah, they just showed up because like what was it like he it's like not recorded in the history by the elves. Is more or less they came about sometime in between.
Yeah,
like,
which is very cool
age.
Because it's like the elves were so caught up in themselves, like they didn't, and which goes in the Lord of the Rings and how the little folk are the ones who destroy the ring. Anyway, the fact that his legends and mythos fade away from this kind of like abstract idea of truth. And then as we get farther into the Silmarillion, like if you've read the Silmarillion, you know that the very beginning is very like Genesis, very creation, very like the idea of the beginning. And as we get farther into the Silmarillion, we kind of zoom in further and further, and the stories get more grounded. As grounded as they can be in the Silmarillion, until the very end, it kind of leads into Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So it's almost this idea that I find very interesting, that things that I like the idea that maybe when we world build, we're trying too hard to come up with this really complex mythology, which is fine, like if that's what people are doing, but I'm just thinking specifically for like TTRPGs. Unless you want to be in like a Greek pantheon in your TTRPG, I think it's really interesting that this idea of like the truths that we are looking to ascend towards are abstract. So, and we get more grounded as we zoom in to the world. I think it makes maybe I've considered this ever since I've read it in my own world building. The gods, they're very abstract now in my world. Well, they were abstract before, and now they're even more because they're separate, right, from our characters or the players. They're supposed to be. And I feel like if you make them too detailed, too human, you lose the point of ascendant truths.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that Tolkien was talking about.
It's weird because Tolkien also are like all the Valar are pieces of Eru.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, including Melkor. And it's funny because you see different personalities within different Valar. And so it's making them personal as well. It's like this legendarium and everything he built for Middle Earth and all that. Like Aule. He was the hold on.
The dwarf wasn't he the dwarf maker?
Yeah, the dwarf maker. Like, the passion he had, he just wanted to create something. We just hinted at like the whole creation of the dwarves, but like that right there, that story alone, that is a god in quotation marks of Arda that live amongst the world. He could not wait for the children of Eru to come. He couldn't wait for the elves, so he went and made his own. And then there's the Abrahamic legend, like Arrow saw that what he had done and said he had to kill them, and Aule was like deeply
Yeah.
saddened. There's like this famous uh picture somebody done or artwork somebody done of Aule
Yeah.
about to strike the dwarves down.
And the Arrow was like, wait, no, don't do
Yeah,
that. I
right,
think
stop.
Arrow's specific thing is like, it's funny that Arrow mentions like you don't have to kill them, but like we have to get rid of them.
Just
And
give them
Owl's like,
some,
well, I guess I have to kill them. And Arrow's like, wait, no, don't do that.
just give them some Benadryl and let them wake up.
Yeah, let them sleep.
Let them sleep for a while, and then the elves come and then like inhabit the land, tame it, and then they can come out. You know.
Yeah. Um.
And then you got Durin's folk.
Yeah, Durin's folk. Yeah, I think because the idea of like, because the gods, in order for them to be gods, they still have to be personal, and I think Tolkien did it very well. Is that as time went by, the gods became less relevant to an extent because they were more separate.
Yeah, they kept after the Noldor were banished. Like you see very little interaction of the gods or Valinor in general, except for when they finally come one last time to siege, or to come after Melkor and finally put him in chains and kick him beyond the door of night.
Yeah.
So, but to kind of wrap up what we were talking about right there, I did want to read the quote. So about the truth and the the legend legendarium, like where we're getting all this from. After all, and this is the words of Tolkien. After all, I believe that legends and myths are largely made up of truths, and indeed present aspects of it that can only be received in this mode. And long ago, certain truths and modes of this kind were discovered and must always reappear. There cannot be any story without a fall. All stories are ultimately about the fall. At least, not for human minds as we know them and have them. So that's
kind of where we're getting this.
That's where we're getting
idea.
This. So that's actually Tolkien's word. So yeah, I think you did a very good job pulling all that together, possibly what Tolkien was trying to mean there. And there's just so much. I went ahead and I'm looking ahead to and then he starts talking about the Silmarillion and oh god,
yeah,
this man
I feel like the first part of the letter is what we kind of, if you want to read this letter for yourself and you're like, I don't want to read the whole thing, read the first part, because that gives you insight on how Tolkien world built. The ultimate world builder in some people's minds. The rest of the letter talks about, things we already know if you've read the Silmarillion. It just goes through. Tolkien's basically trying to convince them the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings are one and the same. You can't publish one without the other. So he's going through how the Silmarillion reflects Lord of the Rings and Lord of the Rings reflects the Silmarillion.
That they all need to be there.
Yeah, and they all need to be there. Which is why the Silmarillion is very important for Tolkien fans. But yeah, the first part of this letter talks so much about the inner workings of how Tolkien thought about our world and how he took our world and made Middle Earth a reflection of what he saw in our world. However, he didn't want to use allegory in Christianity or any of these other mythos. He wanted to create a story for England, basically. He wanted to create a story for England. And while we talked about this, but the allegory thing I think is fascinating because I feel like that almost maybe contradicts is not the right word, but the idea that he's like, this is an allegory, it almost contradicts his idea that everything is like logically laid out in kind of that we've kind of seen in earlier letters. Because like, why would something exist? Why would you make something unless it's not allegory? So I feel like that's a lot of people think like that a lot. So it's very surprising to me that Tolkien was able to separate allegory and story in his mind and be like, stories can logically exist for a reason because stories are about truth.
Mhm.
They don't have to be an allegory of our world to be truthful.
Right.
And I think that's simply fascinating, and I feel like that's something we as world builders can take like with us as just thinking about how we construct the why our world exists. Like it exists for us, right? It exists because we see truths in our world and we interpret those truths. I'm sure there's some psychological thing out there about why world builders do what they do. But
Escapism,
escapism. I'm sure
need for
there's
creation, need for
yeah, there's like so
control.
many things. Control, probably shouting out to the forever dungeon masters.
Hmm. I'm here.
But yeah, you specifically.
Hmm.
Um, but this idea is that we can our worlds that we create are reflections of truths of our world. And I feel like what I'm trying to say is I feel like that's just something to keep in mind is that when thinking of world building, while yes, you want to create things that are beyond human comprehension, I feel like the most important part of world building is the part we can understand. And we can see the truth in, because how else are we meant to understand the things that are beyond our comprehension without a base of understanding and truth? And I think that's why Tolkien wanted the Silmarillion published with Lord of the Rings, because he wanted both. He wanted the things that were beyond our comprehension and the grounded truths of our world. He wanted to present those together. And um yeah, that's what I was thinking when I that's my conclusion to all kind of the
And
truth thing that I've been harping at.
he was also very surprised after the publication of The Hobbit, and of course, eventually The Lord of the Rings. He would have students come and bother him about the
Yeah.
background of it, and it got to the point
Yeah.
where it was like interfering with his job.
Yeah, because people kept sending him letters and
Yeah,
stuff.
asking
He
about the
and
stuff he thought it was not important enough to, like,
yeah.
in some aspects, like the question they were asking, like, they wanted deep detail, and like
Yeah.
of course he had
Lore
it.
fiends.
Yeah, lore fiends after like the meaning of all that. I think that's another reason why I hated Aller. Was like, did you mean this by this? It's like, no,
No.
no,
He's like, they're hobbits.
they're hobbits.
They're hobbits. They're hobbits. And they're like, are they an allegory for maybe like this certain kind of people? And he's like,
No.
they're hobbits. They're just hobbits.
But to kind of tie in right there, I wanted to go ahead and quote.
Yeah.
Well, but to preface this, he was before this he was just talking about wanting the legend for his land. He wanted what the Normans took and everything, and he goes on to say at the end of that is that for another and more important thing, it is involved in explicitly contains the Christian religion. For reasons which I will not elaborate, that seems to me fatal. Myth and fairy story must, as all art, reflect and contain in solution elements of moral and religious truth or error, but not explicit, not in the known form of the primary real world. I'm speaking, of course, of our present situation, not of an ancient pagan pre-Christian days, and I will not repeat what I have tried to say in my essay, which you read. So,
Yeah.
so it's again.
Wait a second. Hold on. I just had a thought.
Hmm?
Do you think this might be completely out there, but he thought England needed moral truths, and he thought those were erased by the Romans and the Normans because of his growing up of World War One?
Well, me personally, I think he looked at all the, like it even kind of hinted at, he looked at the old Celtic, the Roman, the Norse, all the mythology of other lands and things like that, and became jealous because England, Great Britain did not have that. It did not have I get it to a certain extent, because here in America, our lands have the Native American traditions as well, like tied to this land. So it's cool. Which goes back, and they didn't have like all their stories is like told verbally, since the Native Americans didn't have a written language. I think that's what I mean. I wish we would have had something. If the Native Americans did have written language, like what more could we have known about certain areas and things like that? Like, it would be really cool to know that.
I think that's why it's important to preserve Native American traditions.
Yes.
Which is like a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I'm not Native American. I don't have Native American blood. But I really wish that like we could have had more about the land. Think about it, like, it took so long to figure out that the Vikings came, to Nova Scotia and all
exactly.
that. If
it's
it
because
had been written
white
down,
men like to
whitewash.
Whitewash.
I'm a white man. I could say it. We whitewash.
I'm also white, by the way.
So
we can harp on white people.
Yeah, I don't want to step on other people's culture and tradition, but I do. Yeah. I get that desire for wanting more, like from the land you were born in. And Tolkien didn't have that, and he had actually somebody to blame. He had the Normans. He did. And the Romans.
I mean, we kind of have people to blame. Just it's ourselves. It's our bloodline. It's ourselves.
Yeah, we did that.
I think that's why like folklore is so. Maybe that's why Americans were so fascinated with Tolkien. Maybe that's why we are like in America so fascinated. I know Britain is just people love Tolkien in Britain, but in America, Tolkien's not one of us per se.
Yeah.
But we're still so fascinated by him. And it's this idea that his stories are folk tales that told truth. And I just wonder, did he see the need for truth, or did he was he simply just jealous that other lands had folklore and he wanted folklore for England?
I think he was I think it was jealousy or being mad.
Mad. Yeah. He was like, I want this. But I like the idea.
He had some prejudices like towards Norman and French people. So
yeah, he did. He was British. Keep that in mind. He was British in the early 1900s. So
yeah.
But
as for truth, I could agree with that. Yeah, he probably did want to seek that out.
Yeah, because it's this idea. He talks about it when he talks about fall mortality in the machine. There's these constants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's not necessarily that he was trying to piece together the constants, but he wanted to convey the constants of our world through a story, and not necessarily through allegory, because in my mind now, I have separated allegory through conveying our world in a story. I think that's different. Like, I don't know. I've just separated that in my mind, but yeah. Mm-hmm. There's so much to talk about with this, and I feel like we could do another episode.
Oh yeah, we definitely could. I think in the next episode, what we probably need to cover is just like maybe go over Valinor, like and what he put in it and his mindset of that. But like one thing we didn't hit at the start of the episode, like so now retcon this.
Retcon.
What I was gonna want to talk about at the start of the episode, I guess we'll do it now, is like what got us, you and I, originally interested in Tolkien.
Oh yeah, we just dived into Tolkien.
Yeah, we were just so eager to talk about this. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, check this out. Look, I know people at home can't see it. This is one of those old AOL online bookmarkers from 2001, 2002.
Oh, that's cool.
And it has it's from the Lord of the Rings. Like I bought them online, and these things are pristine, so I use that as my bookmarker. So anyway,
nice. I used a paper towel.
Oh.
Because I couldn't find any other bookmarks because I don't know where mine are. But yeah, I think my love of Tolkien. I think many people do know about me online. I have a chronic illness. And so when I was reading Lord of the Rings is when I was at my worst, health-wise. I actually wasn't reading it. I was listening to it because I physically couldn't read. Took too much energy for me to read. So I listened to an audiobook series of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I listened to it over and over and over again.
Was that
and
your
then
first?
When
sorry to interject. Was that your first
Yeah.
introduction, or was it the movies?
No, I had seen the movies a few years before I came down with POTS, which is my chronic illness. I had seen the movies a few years before, and my dad introduced them to me. And I fell in love. But I feel like the movies are, while yes, are Tolkien, I feel like they are very much Peter Jackson
Hmm.
in my mind. Um, but the books are purely like what pure Tolkien is, I
Yes.
guess. I don't know if that's the right word,
No, 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 no. I
but
get it. I get it.
I fell in so much in love with because I felt like I was going on these adventures when I was stuck at home. And so maybe it's just like the nostalgia of that and the idea that I can go different places even if my body doesn't allow me to. Um, and Tolkien allowed me to do that. And I feel like Tolkien was, even though I'd been creating worlds since I was very little, I've been creating worlds inspired by, superheroes, inspired by Star Wars. Tolkien was the one who was like, oh, wow, I want to create a world where so many adventures can happen. And that's kind of what got me into Dungeons and Dragons to begin with, was the idea that I can go places, I can have adventures when I feel like I can't. So that's my love of Tolkien is very, I think, emotional. um, the idea that he took me somewhere that was away from here and when I needed to be.
Yep. Took you
Um,
out of the bad. It was your escapism
yeah,
to get to a
yeah, exactly. And
fantasy
so my
nirvana.
love of Tolkien, yeah, my Tolkien love came from escapism first. And then, I started diving into his more like letters, his biography. I read The Silmarillion 3 times. And now my love is just, his mindset, and I just respect him as a creative. And even just all the things he came up with is really insane. And I it's just this crazy complex world that I keep falling in love with the more I learn about.
You glad I told you about the Waldman letter?
Yeah.
I told you it was great. Um,
Yeah, it was really fun.
my my love for him, or like anything Tolkien. I mean, love for fantasy and things like that did not really begin with Tolkien. I think it really began with a game that is being remastered right now, the Ocarina of Time.
Yep. Hmm.
That's so
I saw that.
Yep. Oh, it's gonna be
You
fun.
sent it to me.
Yep, yep. So my first love is Zelda.
Zelda. Sorry,
So,
Tolkien.
yep. So, but that game got me interested in like fantasy and like swords, and like that is a very. I
Yeah.
was 8 years old when that game came out, and then right on the heels of it, um, Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings came out, and during that time, I've mentioned this in other episodes as well. I did not like reading. Everything was already like in my head. I would just play pretend. I would go over at my grandparents' house and we would create worlds and like play in them and things like that in the woods because she has a huge like a plot of land that we just went crazy on. So
Yeah.
and I was the only child growing up, so of course I had that. I had just being in my room by myself for hours on end playing Zelda or any other kind of N64 game, but mainly Ocarina of Time. And then when Lord of the Rings came out, I I realized that there was something much grander, much I don't like a step up from just
Yeah.
like your your
Upgrade.
your railroading RPG game,
Yeah.
and everything just clicked. And when I learned it was a book, and then I learned who J.R.R. Tolkien was, and then that was my desire to. I guess I had the same thing of like what Tolkien had. I wanted the lore. I wanted to know more, and then
Hmm.
of course then just began my lifelong nerddom of falling into this this trap of just always wanting more lore. That's why I want to be a
Yeah.
D or always am a forever DM. I have to know the lore. Being a
Yeah.
player drives me crazy because I don't know what's going on. I want to know the
Do you
story.
think
Yeah.
another thing I propose, do you think our reasoning for wanting so much lore about Tolkien and all these other worlds is that we want to know the truths of our world?
Oh, that's deep.
We don't have to go into it, but like, that's
Well,
just a question. Maybe I'll leave everyone with, and just to think about and keep you up at night.
well, I think when I was, man, I wasn't necessarily trying to escape anything. I was when I dove into these worlds, or like when I dove into Tolkien, or when I dove into other books after the fact, wanting more and more fantasy, wanting more, this just different lands and things like that. I wasn't trying to escape anything at the time. I mean, I grew up perfectly healthy. I had friends. I mean, I don't know what it was. I still don't know what it is. Maybe it's a sickness of some kind, like, or
Nerd sickness.
yeah, like I caught it early. I got made
Yeah.
fun of for crying in 2003 in The Return of the King when
Everyone
Sam
cries at Return of the King.
it was
I
my
always
first.
cry.
It was the first movie I had ever went to. I was 13 years old, and at the end of it,
Oh.
everybody in the well, no, it wasn't my first movie, but it was my first movie that at the end,
and
everybody stood up and applauded
yeah,
in the
that's crazy.
middle of our town in 2003 from some independent crazy man in New Zealand made this film about
Yeah.
some Arthur who lived, 50 years prior. Sorry, 30 years
Yeah.
prior at that point. It's like everybody stood up and applauded, and I was sitting there crying, and then my best friend was aside, and then he went back and told all our other friends that Chandler was crying in the middle of the theater.
He didn't get it. He didn't get it.
Nah, so I was ragged about that the rest of my life, but now here I am 20 years, 25 years later, it's like, yes, I did cry. Yes, I did.
Yes.
It was beautiful.
Who didn't? It was beautiful.
Why didn't you cry?
I know, exactly. Do you not have feelings? Do you not have emotions? Like,
you
what's
not
up with
know?
you?
And then the justification,
Yeah.
all of it was like it won all the awards, swept the Oscars, everything.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I did love it.
Oh, there was so many. I think I've said about this too. There was like in 2002 when the Two Towers came out.
Yeah.
8 Mile came out at the same time.
Yeah, you've talked about that
Yeah,
too.
and then like it was like, who wants to go see the Two Towers? Who saw 8 Mile? Yeah, Eminem, Slim Shady. I was like, yeah, I chose the Two Towers.
Towers.
Which
Now you know.
everybody still talks about it to this day. I mean,
Yeah,
Eminem's
it's
great,
good.
but nobody talking about 8 Mile right now. Everybody's talking about Two Towers.
Yeah.
There's not memes of 8 Mile. There's no
Yeah,
memes. There's
there's
memes.
memes of tombs of two.
There are
two
memes of
towers.
Two Towers in Lord of the Rings. So
That's funny.
checkmate.
It's the meme graph. Meme graph.
Yeah, you just get bullied about it all through school, and then like now you get the justification years later.
Yeah, exactly. That's
So,
why I ignore bullies. So anyway.
yeah, we went a little bit over.
We did go a little bit over it now that I realize the time. We kept talking and we just didn't shut up, did we?
No, that's Tolkien. But
It's Tolkien. Anyway,
yeah,
as we wrap up the episode, is
The
there
Discord.
anything else you wanted to mention real quick? Yeah, I
The
was about to say that. So now Playing with Ink has an official Discord, and I will put the link in the description. Come join us and talk nonstop about Tolkien, please. We have so many cool people in our community, a lot of cool world builders. If you want to come and join the discussion and give us suggestions for maybe what kind of other episodes you want to see where we don't have guests on, because we will continue to have guests on. I have more guests lined up, don't worry. It's not just going to be me and Chandler talking.
Ooh, we could bring guests on and talk about like different, like talk about Tolkien or like C.S. Lewis or
exactly,
or Brandon Sanderson or something like that,
plans.
like a different like
plans.
yeah.
Plans. But anyway, yes, come join our Discord, come join the community. Yeah, we put a lot of fun things in our Discord, and so now we're announcing it on the podcast. We've been setting it up for a little while, but it's on the now. Come join us. Yay. Another thing that's happening is on the 29th, I am streaming Gothica. If you guys remember, on our second episode, we had Elliot on from Inkblade Publishing, and I am finally running a Gothica one-shot from his World of Gothica. And come join us. We have an amazing cast, and it's going to be so much fun. We have Zach is going to be in it from Bard Soup, and Bold Mordred is going to be in it. So we have two podcast guests playing a podcast guest. world. And we also have 3 other people who are also in it that are friends of mine. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So come check us out on the 29th. It'll be on the Plutach Rogers Twitch channel at 5 p.m. EST. Anyway, was there anything else?
No, I don't think so. I could sit here and talk about Tolkien all day, but
I know, that's what I feel like. Thank you guys for listening to this kind of more non-structured, chill kind of Tolkien discussion where we just kind of went off the rails a little bit. But let us know if you liked this kind of episode or if you didn't like it. I don't think we'll care if you don't like it because we'll still do it anyway.
We still had fun talking about it. So I mean, you guys could
so we
dislike
still
or
had
not.
fun. Dislike or not, but yeah, let us know if you want to see kind of more with different authors. I have plenty of authors that I love that we could like go in, a lot of modern authors too.
Oh, we're gonna have to turn this to a book club, aren't we?
It's just a book club now.
Oh, great. I gotta read more.
I'm gonna read more. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening or watching if you're on YouTube, listening if you're on Spotify, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye. Bye.